Thank you very much for joining us once again on Daily Politics. This is a program that discusses policy, politics, and governance. And it's coming to you live from Trust TV here in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. My name is Shafiu Suleiman. And today we're looking at one disturbing development in our polity, that is the politicization of religion, especially as we approach, the 2023 general elections. Actions, comments, and body language by both political actors, their sympathizers, and of course some religious bodies has left much to be desired in terms of, fueling, if you like, or overheating the polity, creating some demarcations along religious lines that may not or will not, augur well for our, should I say, nascent democracy now? It's over 20 years, so our growing democracy. You recall that over a month ago, the Redeemed Christian Church of Nigeria, that is the RCCG, announced that it wants to create a directorate for politics and governance. The objective, according to the religious group, was, to guide members who assist, rather, members who want to aspire for political offices, and also guide its members as we approach the general elections. Now, few days or few weeks later, one of the frontline presidential hopefuls in Nigeria, leader of the APC, that is All Progressives Congress, talking about Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was also quoted, to have advised a similar religious body, and now talking about the Muslim, the council, that's the Council of Ulama in Oshobo, to also come up with similar, directorate to assist its members also who are aspiring for political offices and so on. Now, again, there have been some write-ups, by some individuals like Professor Faruk Perogi, also against the aspiration of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Imoshi Banjo, even before he declares. Shortly after he declared, there was also another write-up. Faruk was not at home with the aspiration of the Vice President, who he sees, according to his belief or conviction, as one who is who is engaged in religious bigotry and so on and so forth. This is well, a big allegation, and that perhaps Faruk would have to substantiate, and the Vice President, now aspiring to be President, will also have to respond accordingly. But then, just this morning again, I think there was also a statement by the Muslim Right, that is Murik now, knocking the Vice President for declaring his aspiration to run for the office of the President. They describe his the declaration as evangelical and so on. So these are some of the pillars in our polity, especially coming from religious bodies and individuals that are, alluding to some divisions along religious lines. So we'll be looking at the implication of this on our polity, how it can be tamed, especially in a very tense and polarized atmosphere. So on the platform this evening, we have two gentlemen, one in the studio and the other joining us via Skype from Kano. In the studio, we have Professor Kamal Bello, who is a professor of political science from the National Open University of Nigeria. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Iftar Mubarak.
Thank you.
I hope you had a very nice breaking of fast.
Alhamdulillah.
Right. Okay. Going to Kano, we'll be joining Mr. Salahuddin Hashim. He is a senior program officer with the Center for Legislative Advocacy, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, that is CISLAC. He's also joining us to discuss this issue. Thank you, Mr. Salahuddin, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
How is Kano under fasting? I hope you had a nice...
Yeah, you know, when it is fasting, it's very, very, very scanty. And the weather is actually beautiful. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so without wasting much time, I think we would go straight to Kano to get the perspectives of Mr. Salahuddin. What do you make up with this development? Quite a disturbing development in our polity. Before now, religion wasn't, used too prominent, so to speak, or during elections or during electioneering campaigns and so on. We've had even scenarios where, we have same faith kind of tickets, that is in the Second or Third Republic, where you have a Muslim kind of ticket and nobody raised an eyebrow. But here we are with a polity that is deeply polarized along religious line. How are you looking at this, and what do you think is triggering this at this point?
Thank you very much. I think it would be nice to begin by saying that the vitality of religion to the electoral process is not something that we can actually wish away. Nigeria is a secular state, and we know that. And of course, there are, however, a number of factors that constantly shapes our political process. Religion, unfortunately, is one of such a huge factor. And this is one very fundamental instrument that crept into our political space sometimes around 2011. I mean, there are historical perspectives, but of course, even from your introduction, we noticed and realized that it was never an issue. We saw the 1993 election that was widely proclaimed as free and fair across the country. It was a Muslim ticket, and nobody was interested. And that is the typical character of a Nigerian. But we have an elite capture of the society. The elite capture of the society have now decided to latch in on an intrinsic aspect of citizens, something that actually resonates with us. And they have seen it as a very critical tool to use to either divide or bring us together. And it would be good to put on the table that when it comes to the point of sharing loots and sharing corrupt practices and appointments, religion and ethnicity does not play out. But they play this out along the lines of the minds of an average Nigerian. And no wonder there was this saying that religion is an opium of the masses. So which means that it clearly excludes the elites once you want to use it as a tool for division. The politics of religion, or the religion of politics, depending on how you want to put it, has become something that we really need to pay a lot of attention to. The elites have seen it as a key gap that can be used to divide citizens along the lines of their interests. And always remember that the issue of election and politics basically has to do with individual interests. And political sociologists have actually also said very clearly that religion is an essential determinant in our political outcomes. We have begun to see this playing out in the last our two electoral cycles, and that has deeply polarized Nigerians along ethnic and religion lines. This is an unfortunate development within our political space, and I think it is beginning to influence the factors that diminished most of our democratic tenets. And this is diminished because it actually becloud our reasoning. People don't no longer bother about merits. People don't look at issues about specific indicators that should help you to choose or select. But once they sell religious ideologies to us, we begin to buy it, and that has unfortunately made us to select or choose leaders who don't have capacity. The
Yeah, Mr.
Constitution made it
Salahuddin,
very clear.
yeah, Mr. Salahuddin, yes, if talking about politicians, some will say, they are a set of people that all that matters to them is winning election. And of course, at a time like this, just like you said, they can take advantage of any fault line, to achieve their objectives. Some of them, you never see them or had them talking about religion until they find themselves in a tight corner, or they realize that this is the only avenue they could, outsmart or upstage, their opponents. But then it becomes disturbing when you begin to hear religious bodies, getting involved, practically in politics. For instance, the setting up of a directorate for religion, for politics and governance by the RCCG, and of course a call by one of the political aspirants, also on an Islamic organization, the Ulama Association now, to also adopt similar measure. And of course, we're beginning to see also the manifestations of religious impact on certain relationship even between religious bodies and, of course, or religious, the religious leaders and their employers. For instance, what happened in Abuja, where an imam was relieved of his position as a result of his certain, comment that were considered critical to the government. So, didn't you think we're graduating? It's becoming, it's taken a new dimension that something needs to be done urgently to stem the tide.
No, yeah, I agree with you completely. Religion is actually taking the toll of politics. And of course, when you mentioned that politics is beginning to, it is as a result of recent awareness. There is an awareness that is becoming very obvious and glaring after the 2011 general elections, where you see people voting along ethnic and religious lines. And for me, I think it is an issue that is very fundamental for religious leaders like the Redeemed Christian Church of God, like the Council of Ulamas, like strategic, to also understand that, yes, they have the right to get involved and participate in politics. That is a franchise that we cannot deny them from. But that they should not use the platforms. As individuals, they can go and do that. But that they should not use the platform. And of course, you would notice that even recently, Pastor Tunde Bakari also came out and also spewed some vital operations about the Igbo presidency, and he did that on the altar. And I think it is important to separate the altar from politics. It is important to separate the mosque and the tafsirs and all of those platforms from politics. Politics should be left for individual participation and not mix it with something that resonates so dearly with the people. At the moment you begin to mix it, that is where the challenge really lies. And what that does is that it actually allows us to actually get leaders that are not capacitated. I'll give you a very typical example. Challenge with APC and El-Rufai, decided to defy every candidature under the APC and voted PDP. And unfortunately, the capacity of those they voted under the PDP within that space, if you ask me, are not. So the issue of merit actually took the back seat, and people were more committed to actually taking individuals who actually resonate with their faith. And that, for me, is a danger that we need to really deal with.
Not a very dangerous scenario there. Okay, let me get the views of Professor Kamal here in the studio. Salahuddin is talking about the dangers, of getting, or politicizing religion, especially by those who are, to I mean, to preach the gospel, and of course, those who utilize the altar, to begin to preach, some political ideologies or political preferences and so on and so forth. Coming at the time, Nigeria is seen to be deeply polarized. What do you see in terms of the negative impact this will do to our unity as a country?
Thank you very much. The issue of religion in politics is not new in Nigeria. It has antecedents. It has an history. It's a kind of evolution. It's becoming now a kind of monster. It can boomerang. And the genesis of this is that there is a book I wrote, Ideological Bankruptcy in the Political Practices of Nigeria. Genesis, magnitude, and consequences. And I traced from the First Republic, the Second Republic, the Third Republic. It became more prominent in the Third Republic when IBB created SDP and NRC. SDP a little to the left, NRC a little to the right.
That's right.
Because a rightist is capitalism. Leftist is socialism. Since we cannot close our eyes as elites and say we are socialists ideologically or capitalists ideologically, we are dilly-dallying a little to the right, a little to the left, which means we are not capitalists, we are not socialists.
But here we're talking about ideology there. You're talking about ideology now, which is political ideology.
I said, I wrote a book called Ideological Bankruptcy in the Political Practices of Nigeria.
How does it connect, to the issue? Because we're talking about religion.
Yes, that's why I'm using that book as an example.
Okay.
I said, where there's no ideology, we are not a socialist, we are not a capitalist. There are two ideologies in the world, political economy ideology. We need to face reality. Which one are we? Are we a socialist? Are we a capitalist? We cannot pick. We have not picked. Our political economy ideology in the Constitution, we call it mixed economy.
That's right.
A mixture of capitalism and socialism, which means we are hypocrites. We are not here, we are not there.
But we're looking at contemporary dynamics and realities.
That is what we are saying. It's hypocrisy. Are you getting it? Because, was it Frantz Fanon? He said, when there's war or there's disagreement, you must take a position. If you say you are a Nitra, he said that you are a coward or you are a betrayer. Nigeria will stop because of our situation. We are either cowards or we are betrayer. We are not capitalists, we are not socialists because of our environment. So if there's lack of ideology, there are two ideologies in the world, politically, economically. It's either capitalist or socialist.
That's right.
We cannot take one. Definitely, what will happen? Tribalism, religion, ethnocentrism will be taken over. It will become our ideology. Are you getting it?
So if I understand your position, it is the lack of ideology, that breeds, this.
Leads to. Lack of ideology led to this, of using religion, using tribe, ethnocentrism, ethnicity, religionism, regionalism, sectionalism. Because Kalman said that religion and tribalism and tribe, they are false consciousness. They are not reality. What is the reality? Is economy. He said the structure is the economy.
Yes, Laudin was talking about, capacity, talking about competency, talking about, merit. Those perhaps are the things that we should look forward to.
Remember in the First Republic, people like Awolowo will come out and tell the world that they are socialist. Are you getting it? Yeah. People like Aminu Kano will tell you that this is the ideology he has. People like Sadona of Sokoto will come out and tell us what the ideology they have. They have ideology, that's what they used to attract the people at that time. It wasn't when Sadona took over government as a premier, introduced what we call northernization. It's an ideology.
The northernization policy.
Northernization policy. When Obasanjo and Muritala came, they introduced what we call indigenization policy. Are you getting it? Those are ideologies. But since the Third Republic, those ideologies have been withered. Are you getting it? And it's not this Third Republic.
But one thing that would, that is surprising, or you cannot explain, perhaps, is that talking about religion now, for the followers now, who would allow, religious bodies or politicians, to buy their conscience along these religious lines. But looking at the scenario and the contemporary realities, you're talking about political economy earlier on. Yes. Whatever is happening in the country is not segregating along these lines. If you're talking about poverty, or if you're talking about unemployment or insecurity, it goes across, religions. So, but why is it that, people will be allowed to be used along these lines, especially by politicians?
No, what we are trying to say is that establishes this. I remember when the military took over in 1966, and Gowon became the head of state. The person he picked, who served like a deputy, is Awolowo, and gave him the Minister for Finance, Federal Commissioner for Finance. It's like his deputy. Gowon is a Christian. Awolowo was a Christian. Nobody cares. Are you getting it? Because people have not been using those things to tell us. If a country will be better, it's we, the elites, that will make it better. We are the ones that are fighting the attention of the masses. And the masses are always in majority. The elites are few, the cream like cream. We are the one to make sure to tell them what is exactly happening. We are not telling them exactly what is happening. When Muritala was killed, the head of state then, General Muritala, Obasanjo took over. The second in command, by rank of the military, supposed to be the officer Danjuma, T.Y. Danjuma. But because of religion, they started that, no, there is need for religion balance, which nobody cares for at that time. They now pick the senior Yaradua, who is a lower rank, so that they can be a deputy. So it's a gradual thing.
Yeah, so
it's not happening today. It's gradual. It's a gradual thing.
But and it continues. Assuming a very frightening dimension when we begin to see religious organizations, taking, towing this line, and of course making it categorical or taking a position with regards to...
I'm sorry. Another thing that make it to be big is this media, the social media. There was nothing like this before. People talk in mosque, abuse government. But it's only you, community.
Within, yes.
We know, we hear. But today somebody will record it. By the time you put it on Facebook or WhatsApp, millions of people are reading it. And people will be thinking that, oh, what this man said can ignite fire all over the world. So the social media is also contributing. Okay. Everybody's a journalist now. You can take your camera, your handset, you can snap anything.
The advent of citizens journalism.
Journalism. You can be in your room and say something, then you will now be sending it out. And people will say, no, Giwa is burning. Kaduna Road is burning. Somebody just said something. It's not investigated.
Well, okay, let me go back to Salahuddin. Salahuddin, you've had a professor talking about the root cause of all of this, and how it started, gradually, snowballing into what we're seeing today. And he did mention that it is the absence of ideology in the first place in our polity, that gap that was created was what the politicians are taking advantage of. How are you looking at that, as a factor?
I agree with Prof completely because of obviously when parties no longer have ideals and ideology, they are not driven by any specificity. So they then act like a man who is drowning that then takes advantage of every and anything around it. So that is very illustrative because what you see today is that political parties still use the same indices that was used 30 years ago, 40 years ago, still campaigning. And I find that quite worrisome. If you go into political parties and their structures, ask them to give you their manifesto that is driven by ideals. That is why you see politicians are very easy to decamp because they are not driven by any ideal. If you check the Republicans and the Democrats, yes, a Republican might not like Trump, but because he believed in the ideology of the party, he remains there. He might abuse Trump, he might abuse anybody, but he remains there. Somebody in the Democrats might not like Biden, but of course he remains. But what do we have here? Politics of interest, politics of stomach infrastructure, politics that only puts food on the table. So long as you are not within the political calculation, then that is not happening. So going deeper a little further, we also heard recently the chairman of, was it the Pentecostal Association of Nigeria, or CAN, who also requested the president to also have a directorate of spiritual intelligence as a way of also using spiritual intelligence to curb insecurity. I think sometimes when you listen to how religious leaders get themselves too messy and too involved, you begin to ask yourself, at what point did we get to this stage? But what you see basically is that during the day, most of these religious leaders are religious leaders, but at night, they remove the cassock and they remove the turban, and of course, they are politicians at night. If you recall, during the Jonathan period, that the chairman of the president of the Pentecostal Association of Nigeria, his private jet was actually available for several errands, one of which was the $9 million that was actually intercepted in South Africa, where they said then the money was supposed to be used to procure arms in the black market. So at what point does the private jets of the president of a particular faith become readily available to be used? So you see the kind of mix that we actually witnessed. And if you see how this generally begins to permeate into our subconscious mind, it actually asks you a lot of questions, that at what point did we get to this point? But the challenge is actually about putting performance and popularity at the back seat and actually coloring anything you want to sell in this country, just color it with religion. And I tell you, it will sell very fast. And unfortunately, we are at that stage.
Right. Now, looking at the situation, and of course, what needs to be done. Perhaps not long ago, the present administration came up with what you call, through the CAC Act, was making an attempt to regulate, how religious bodies get involved in politics and how they do their businesses and so on. And then there was this uproar, some resistance as to why should you look at the books, why should you look at what we're doing, and so on and so forth. But then some would say, even though it's difficult for people to call for the need to regulate, religious involvement or religious organizations, activities of religious organizations. But with what we are seeing today, do you think there's need to come up with some level of, sanctions now or regulations, to guard against some of this involvement that could also lead to, jeopardize the unity and the peace of the country?
I think very clearly, if we hold government to account and we continue to hold them to account, every section of the society somehow should also find a way to also account for what they do. And I must commend the Kaduna State government. I know one of the earliest things that he did was to come up with that bill to regulate religious activity in the state, even though a lot of people try to call for his head. But of course, the fact is that considering the monster that is gradually creeping up and trying to consume us, we need to have some level of optics that allows us to see the dangers and mitigate them ahead of time before we are all consumed. Look at in the UK, this very popular pastor and the biggest church from the black race in the UK, owned by Matthew Ashimolowo, was under receivership for a long time before he decided to come back to Nigeria. It tells us very clearly that in advanced democracies, that there are quite a lot of instruments that allows and yield people to account. We cannot continue to run a system that does not provide any sort of accountability. Even the both books that we all follow, both the Bible and the Quran tells us very clearly about how we must respect authority and how we must continue to become accountable to authorities, accountable to followers, accountable to God, and accountable to every. So accountability is actually the key hub. So if we agree that accountability is at the central vertebrae of trying to ensure that we don't mix religion and politics, then we need to put a clear demarcation to ensure that there is no mix. But unfortunately, once it is election period like this, you will find a lot of religious leaders begin to make utterances, begin to use those popular platforms that they have as a platform to begin to spread word, spread hate, and these are very uncalled for. And you ask yourself, what exactly do they want to achieve? I mean, they preach peace. And if they preach peace, why should you then use those sentimental platforms to begin to fire people's emotions, fire people's intrinsic beliefs? I think that is something that should actually be completely regulated, because you cannot use mediums because they are available to you to use them to create chaos and create problems. I mean, we have witnessed challenges and concerns around the religious crisis in Kaduna, in Kano, in Plateau. We have seen the enormous amount of death and fatalities that we have recorded. Livelihood have been lost, lives were lost, people are still currently displaced. We have seen people. So why would we then not find a channel to begin to put and stem those in the bud? But one thing is very clear, that there should be an executive order in any form or whatsoever that should, as a matter of urgency, put some very immediate stop to anybody who wants to use a popular platform, a popular religious platform, to create or incite any kind of a situation in this country. We have seen enough. We have witnessed enough. We have seen enough death, enough blood, enough tears. We don't want to get into that anymore. So if we have seen enough, then we must be very deliberate. And one of the deliberate steps we must take is that government must issue an immediate decree or an order that will actually regulate that.
Right. Okay, they need to apply the brakes by, creating, creating some checks, that will bring about religious accountability so that we can have sanity in the society. That has been Salahuddin Hashim, a senior program officer with CISLAG, talking to us on Daily Politics, live from Kano on the topic politicization of religion. And here in the studio, I've been interfacing with Professor Kamal Bello of the National Open University of Nigeria. Together we'll be looking at the issues. It's about time we take a break. We'll return to you, Salahuddin, when we return from the break to get more inputs and more suggestions as to how we can tame this monster. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Thank you very much for staying with us. It's still Daily Politics, and it's reaching you live from Trust TV here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. And today our talking point is politicization of religion by both political actors, religious bodies and individuals, especially as we head towards the 2023 general elections. We'll be looking at the consequences, the impact, and of course, what need to be done to tame this, you know, as we progress towards the election. And then before the break, Salahuddin Hashim was actually talking about the need to apply the brakes, especially by the authorities, you know. He talked about the need for the government, especially the president, to come up with an executive order. But then I was also talking about some of the measures taken by government in terms of, though not directly regulating the activities or the activities of religious bodies, but then looking at what they do in terms of accountability and so on. Now, how do you think we can, you know, we can handle this situation? One, just like Salahuddin had said earlier, you cannot, you know, separate religion from politics or separate politics from religion. But then there is a thin line. How do we, you know, practice religion without necessarily, using it to politicize or to you know, have an impact, a negative impact on our polity? How do we separate these two?
To start with, the issue of Nigeria is a secular state. It's there in the constitution. Secularism.
Yes.
And secularism means that there's no state religion. Religion is a personal thing. It should not be carried to the public.
Okay.
But it's in theory. In practice in Nigeria, we are a multi-religious society. Unfortunately for us, we are too loose, we are too open, that we import every religion to Nigeria. Orthodox Islam, Orthodox Christianity are not violent. It is when we are importing what we call new generation, Pentecostal, in Islam and Christianity. That's when we started having problem. They started with Muslims and started with Orthodox Christian. That the practice of your religion is not properly practiced. They are the one that bring a kind of renewal. And they are separating. And then starts causing all this problem. Because all these RCCG, all these Murik and so on, Committee of Ulamas, they are generations, they are new generation of religion. Real religion is to face God. I remember in the Islamia, we were taught that during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when there's drought, scarcity, economic crunch, poverty, because the economy depends on rain that time, on agriculture, even up to now. Economics will tell you that land, labor, capital, entrepreneur, that's are the basic. You must have land. And not ordinary land, but fertile land. If the land is not fertile, rain is not falling, the malams, the ulamas, they will go to the back of the town, pray to God to bring rain. Before they come home, rain will start falling, so that they can have bumper harvests. Those are the things that we cannot separate religions from. I remember this man is a political scientist. When there was problem in 1989 with socialism, with communism, USSR, he said end of history. Huntington. He said that's end of history. Because there's no Cold War again. There's no struggle between capitalism and socialism.
Yes.
But
a new old order has to emerge. Yeah.
But later he realized, because no, there was a polar world. Later it became unity. Are you getting it? But later I realized that's what you call the religious civilization. It's also playing a certain role in the life of the people. Yeah. And I say clash of civilization. Are you getting it? If our malams and pastors stand on what God taught in the Bible and the Quran to find solution to our problem, it would have been better.
But we're
if there's crisis of Boko Haram, bandits killing, malams do tell us, the pastor do tell us that they can pray for God to bring peace. Why are they not doing that? Why is it that it's real politics of APC and PDP they are interested in, when God has given them the way to intervene in the politics?
Yeah, but Professor, we are talking about political mobilization, for instance.
Yes.
You know, some will say there's nothing wrong, you know, for religious bodies to mobilize their followers, you know, to engage or to participate actively in politics, like some of these religious bodies are saying.
Sir,
apart from, you know,
sir, it is wrong. It is wrong.
Because
if you enter politics, like Gumi did, they insulted him. when he said the government is not doing, he will go to a mosque and preach, like this Khalid did now, Noura Khalid. If he has maintained himself to be preaching what God says, without mobilizing for politics,
but wouldn't
the
society be doomed when we don't have people that can rise up and speak truth to power? And the religious organizations, religious bodies also have a responsibility
when we were young,
to ensure a safe, a secured, and of course a prosperous society.
When we were young, we taught religious men they are first students of Allah, of God in the heart. That when there's problem, they can talk to the Creator on our behalf. Must they be attacking government? Was it not to talk to God on our behalf because they are close to Him? Religion should be left to individuals' conscience, and you should use it if truly, if not that they have even monetized religion now. If you don't have money, they cannot pray for you well. They can't pray for you well. So if they stand by the religion, in those days, what they make us to believe is as if all those things are myths. Our children and grandchildren, I don't know how we teach them that religion is very important in life. Because they are exposing religion now.
But the society is evolving, and we're beginning to realize that, there is virtually religion in everything we do. We cannot separate.
No, I'm saying the same thing. If you cannot separate, you are politicizing religion. And it is difficult for us now, to tell our children and grandchildren that religion has a spiritual, the way they brought us up, the religion has a spiritual assistance to do in your life. We key into it. But the same religious people who are supposed to preach it and key into it are telling us now that no, we don't use that aspect is to attack and to politicize it.
Well, okay.
So which means the spiritual. Even at a time, our children may not pray again because they will not see the efficacy of it. Because most of our pastors and malams, they are telling us now that religion cannot help us to solve our problem. It's attack of government. You talk to power. If you want to change the revolution in Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini did revolution through religion. In Nigeria, in the man and Sheikh Usman Danfodio, if you want to change government through religion, come out and change it.
Well, but how do you change it? Is it violently or, because we're in a democratic society where, there's freedom of speech, and of course there is channel of, you can communicate, you can talk to the government,
but not use religion,
not
using religion's platform to do it.
Well, perhaps that's where the fault is. But let me get Salahuddin perspective on this as we're rounding up gradually. Mr. Salahuddin, yes, we talk about the religious organizations, the religious leaders, and so on and so forth. But today, we're beginning to see, religious religious leaders metamorphosing into joining, politics and so on and so forth. Perhaps that's the danger. Take, for instance, the incumbent vice president, talking about Professor Osibanjo. You cannot take it away from him. He's a pastor from the Redeemed Church of God, the RCCG, and of course, everyone knows that he has affiliation for that. He also has sympathy for that. You've talked about Pastor Tunde Bakari, who is also aspiring now. He has thrown his hat into the race, and of course, he did even that from the altar too. I've seen a video where he was telling the followership that he is in a position or is prepared, to be the next president of the country and so on. So we are having politicians, gradually taking over political roles and so on. How do we get them to, stick to the principles, or how do we get them to do the right thing now by doing, everything possible to stick to, what the teachings are and what politics is all about? How do we get them to do this? It's like the network is not friendly. Did you get that, Salahuddin? Oh, okay. So yeah, I was just asking him this particular question now. How do we, because we have the political actors who are precipitating this, or making it difficult for us by certain comments or by certain actions or inactions. How do we get them to actually see the difference, or to
play,
along the...
I heard the question you asked. When we see something that will favor us, we will quote the developed countries, developed democracies. Is that how it's done there? Mixing religion with politics? You will go to the pulpit and be talking of supporting Democrats or supporting Republicans? Me, I believe in what you call division of labor. If you're a teacher, teach. If you're a politician, politicize. If you're a religious man, be religious. That's how it should be. You can't mix together. Somebody go to school, I'm sorry, and read economics and came with a third class. The next thing you become a pastor or become a malam or an imam and be preaching and be leading. It is need knowledge. You need to be trained in the heart of religion.
But some would say because we're having deficit in terms of people who have the fear of God, to lead, and that is why we're beginning to see religious leaders coming to aspire for political positions.
No, what we are saying is that if you want to be a politician, remove the kiosk, the gap of religion, and say I'm a politician. In academia, when you are writing projects or anything, or paper, and you are quoting Bible and quoting Quran, it will tell you, say, don't quote, because we will criticize it. And these are only book that is not subject to criticism. So if you want to be a pastor, you want to be an imam or malam, and you want at the same time participate in politics, you will make us to be insulting God.
That's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's insulting God.
Yeah, I think Salahuddin is back. Let's get to hear his final thoughts on this. Salahuddin, okay, thank God you're back now. I was asking this question, before the network issue. How do we reconcile these issues? Because we have, just like I said, some would say because it is because of the lack of, or the deficit in people of conscience, people of, good people, God-fearing people, that we are beginning to see religious leaders also aspiring for political positions. How do we reconcile, or how do we get them to clearly, how do we get them to act along these two fault lines? Oh, I think the network is still bad.
The audio.
Yes, the audio in particular. Salahuddin. Okay, I think.
The question is you ask them.
Yes.
In their mosques and churches, have they run it properly to serve as a model for how to run Nigeria better? You see, Bakari, that they borrow money from Wema Bank to build a kind of hall, and the hall could not be built during the COVID, and he ran to bankruptcy. He could not pay the money to the Wema Bank. If you are religious truly, you're supposed to run your association or your church or mosque well. Then you can also use it as a model, that this is what I want to transfer to Nigeria. Is there any role model among them?
Okay, beyond the religious leaders, we're rounding up now. What other regulations, or what other, because some will say perhaps the media has a role to play, the government, the regulators in the broadcast industry and so on and so forth, because these are some of the, they can stem the tide in terms of applying the necessary breaks or sanctions.
Excuse me. Our problem in Nigeria is not that of law, but the breach of the law. We breach law.
When laws are breached, then where are the sanctions?
For instance now.
Who sanctioned who?
For instance now, if you commit crime in Nigeria, you steal money. And then you can have a good lawyer, senior advocate of Nigeria, who can help you to talk to the judge. They will turn the case and say you are a free man. Have we not seen it? And then in democracy, president cannot jail anybody unless the court says you should be jailed. The president himself is handicapped. He did what we call an executive order on local government. They went to court. The court said he has no right. So why is handicapped?
So how do we resolve this issue?
It's radical. It is all the suggestions we are making is too cosmetic. We knew in our mind that this is the right thing to do. When they say change begin with me, they are correct. Each and individual of us, we are selling appointment, we are selling employment, we are selling everything. We are selling even employment, or somebody who is going to risk his life as a soldier or police. And you think something will change. It will go to the road and be collecting money.
So do we just fold our arms?
We're not folding. We should talk.
So what do we do?
Orientation. Change begins with me. Everybody should have that. That let me change what I'm doing that is not normal. it's then that Nigeria can change.
Okay.
It's an orientation. It's a change of attitude.
Thank you very much, Professor Kamal Bello. I think it's about time we come to the end of the discussion here. Time has been fast spent. We've been trying to link up with Salahuddin Hashim, but because of the technology challenge. We really appreciate your input, Salahuddin, Senior Program Officer with CISLAC, for your perspectives on the topic. And of course, we look forward to having you more in subsequent editions of the program. Right. Okay, and back here, Professor Kamal, we also appreciate your coming and your perspectives on the topic this evening.
You're welcome.
Okay, on his behalf and the technical crew, my name is Shafiu Suleiman. Have a wonderful evening ahead.